You're cute. Oh, we're starting to see he's filtered in here. I'm Tom Galucci here with TMC, welcoming you into the latest edition of TMC Tech Talk, featuring our partners with Active Comply today. And I've got a pair of great distinguished guests with me, Head of Compliance, Melissa Thomas, as well as the company founder, Mike Prince. Before we jump into the discussion, just a reminder, this TMC Tech Talk takes place every other Thursday, where I'm joined by a special guest focused in mortgage tech to kind of chat about current events, new innovations, consumer experience, and also spend some good time spotlighting our guests' direct contributions to pushing forward innovation within the mortgage industry. So, as always, any comments, questions, suggestions, ideas for future discussion topics, industry leaders that you'd like to see on Tech Talk, feel free to drop those in the chat, or you could reach out to me directly or anybody on the team here at TMC. Quick shameless plug too. We're getting reunited, coming back to in person for our 21 summer conference, September 18th to the 21st at Terranea Resort in Southern California. So highly encourage our members and our partners to reach out to your team members for more information. Sign up there. Shameless plug here too. In addition to the conference, our partners with Active Comply are going to be sponsoring our Tuesday morning breakfast, as well as the fun joint activity that's going to come with that on site at Terranea. So come join TMC and Active Comply in SoCal this summer.
Most important meal of the day, right?
That's right. Exactly. Everyone's going to need it from the night before. On that note, I want to welcome in formally Mike and Melissa. Hello. Active Comply. How you guys doing today?
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being my guest here. I always love to start out these discussions just by, giving the audience a little bit of a flavor for each of your backgrounds and kind of the path that took you into mortgage tech in particular. And Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Just start off because you've got a deep background in tech-related startups here. So I'd love a little background from you.
Sure. I've been a programmer for over 20 years. Primarily web application development. About 12 years ago, I started a site called Corporation Wiki, which is a corporate research tool. And it part of the technology behind it is it goes out onto the internet, looks at public record repositories, pulls that information in, and tries to clean it up and make decisions on whether it's a good quality data, make classifications, like what kind of information is this. And so from that effort, sprang Active Comply, because I have a friend who's runs a mortgage lender, and there's a need for social media compliance for that particular for this particular space that wasn't being served, at least in their estimation. So we looked at the technology that I had been developing over the last 12 years or so, and decided that it could be modified to work for this space. So that was kind of the start of Active Comply. It was really an offshoot of another project that I've been running for 10 years or so. And that's, from there, we just kind of built it from inside other mortgage lenders and collaborated with them. So, hey, what do you need? And then we'd build that in. And that's how, we got to where we're on, TMC Tech Talk talking to you today, Tom.
No, I love it. I mean, it's right in the ethos of what we try to do here too with the collaborative. You kind of listen to your lenders, clients out there, and try to build solutions that drive their needs. So I appreciate that background. And Melissa, I'm going to put the spotlight on you now because I know you got quite the legal compliance background, and I imagine that kind of dovetails nicely into your role with Active Comply.
It worked out perfectly. I mean, when I was in college, I worked part-time at a mortgage lender in the mailroom, sending out disclosures to older borrowers who didn't know what e-consent was. So I started in the most menial of tasks and then worked my way through compliance departments with opportunities there, got to work on regulatory examinations, doing call reports, looking at mortgage advertising, the full rung of all things mortgage compliance. So I had a really great experience there with a great team. And from that, I was getting my degree in some business analytics and technology. So to combine that kind of mentality about business analytics, business technology applications, mortgage lending space, right? And then the heart of it being legal and compliance. So I don't think there could have been a better role than active compliance. So we've had a great time developing a service from a technology standpoint, but also from a compliance background standpoint.
Absolutely. And for anybody on the line not familiar, the Active Comply is our partner here within the collaborative network. It really specializes in social media compliance monitoring software, keeping your organization and your originators at the same point in time very compliant in the content and the postings that they're putting out on different platforms in there, so you don't get in trouble with the regulators. Which kind of leads me into the next question here. Would love you guys take, about, I guess, kind of current events related to or kind of driving some of active compliance mortgage technology advancements. As I've got to imagine, multitude of current events out there that kind of factor in or, driving where you're innovating going forward. So I'd love your take, even just starting maybe from a regulatory standpoint, since I think everybody's alarms are up a bit with the new administration and what it might mean for their organizations.
Sure. I mean, we had a tremendously busy year, right, Mike? I mean, from all kinds of standpoints. First and foremost, regulatory items. There's been a change in administration, both in the presidential office, but also in some of our regulatory bodies like the CFPB and things like that. And that change has definitely fostered a commitment to different priorities around fair lending. Most importantly, we had the COVID crisis that happened, which means that we got really busy as a mortgage industry, right? With that sometimes comes the cutting of corners or things that fall on the back burner just to keep up with that traffic. And so something that very often falls on the back burner specifically is that mortgage compliance on social media. It's really difficult for a lender to go out and do that type of manual review or make time for that when you're so busy dealing with production heights. So having that fair lending automation built into our system, as well as looking for key trigger terms from regulatory bodies that would trigger specific disclosures, was really important in fostering that automation. That way we would save our lenders, most importantly, time, but also save them from potential citations that are on their record forever. Another big issue that was important this year was that we had a presidential election, and there was a lot of opinions about that, right? And it's important to note that social media is inherently personal. So very often business and personal mix. We see that most predominantly on Twitter. I think Mike would agree. We have quite the folder for items like that. So having terms built into our system around political items that might be important to a mortgage lender. We definitely never force it on anybody, but they know that they have that functionality available to them. We also had some updates in technology around current event items. So there was something that happened in DC in January. You may not remember it. So we made some keyword triggers for our lender partners and said, hey, the next day we were really busy. Here are some items that maybe you would sort of want us to look for. Let us know if you want to opt in. And we got a resounding yes. Nobody wants to see their LO on the front page of a newspaper, with their NMLS ID tied right next to it. So a lot of our innovations were around not just regulatory compliance, even though that's really the heart of what we do, but also around brand reputation, brand protection, things like that, public relations, most certainly.
Well, so you guys ever put out a, maybe scrub it for usernames or anything like that, but the greatest hits of out to your clients of what not to put out on social media?
So we have a wall of shame folder, and we blur most certainly, but it's all publicly available. So we see the full ring of everything in the industry, not just for our clients. And there are some great items. For a time there was Parlor, and that alone was really great for us. So it just shows all the risks that can come with having social media, but it's not a tool that's going anywhere anytime soon. And I doubt that if you say as a lender, don't use social media, that your LOs are gonna fall in line with that.
Well, and I've got to imagine too, just with, in large part due to the pandemic and forcing, teams more remote, from a marketeer standpoint, as well as from like a originator standpoint, probably spending that much more time leveraging their social forums to kind of grow their brands without having that availability to, meet with clients or referral partners in their offices. And I got to imagine that rise in frequency of posts also creates more opportunities for compliant related issues too.
Yep, we had a busy year on that front because they couldn't meet with their builder buddies or their referral partners in person. So they went online. That means that all of that communication is readily available to a regulator. And it's one of those things that, very interestingly, a regulator doesn't have to ask the lender for. They just find it beforehand, and then they're like, surprise, here are your citations once they get there. So definitely keeping an eye out for RESPA Section 8 concerns with kickbacks and gift card exchanges. Thanks so much for your continued business. Glad I could take you on this fishing trip. Can't wait to, see what the next year holds, things like that.
Awesome. Just a reminder, everybody out there, you're watching TMC Tech Talk. Our special guests today are Mike Prince and Melissa Thomas with Active Comply. Next question here for you both. Obviously, our mortgage technology space is continually growing and tackling, short staffing and human error issues. Can you both speak a little bit to the manual versus tech automation experience?
Sure.
As far as the manual and the tech or the automation, Melissa might be in a pretty good spot to talk about it because she has done both sides of that. But trying, and I'll turn it over to her in a second. But trying to to stay on top of social media manually is it's impossible. It's a fire hose, right, of just constant information and posts and pictures and things coming out. And to try to stay on top of that in a manual process, and to discover new accounts that are being created, new platforms that are being developed, like we talked about Parlor. We may mention, talk about Alignable here in a little bit. There's just all these new networks that show up that, given where we are in the space, we get to hear a lot about it because that's what we do. We're out there looking for it. We hear it from our clients like, hey, do you support this? And so that's how we're able to see just the overwhelming amount of information that is coming up out there. And like you mentioned with the pandemic, we saw initially a 40% increase in posting activity for LOs where they were like, well, I guess we're going to have to do this here. And they just sat on their computer and started, continuing their marketing efforts. So I think that's the overall essence of it. From the in the weeds perspective, I think Melissa might have some insight as well.
It's true. I did come from a manual process. And that's why I was so thankful for Active Comply as a compliance person who had seen, oh, thank God, because half the battle is finding it, right? Finding the accounts that are out there, finding the instances of your branding. And also the biggest fear at night when you go to bed is, I don't know what I don't know. What's going to pop up with a regulator email the next day that I was supposed to be on the lookout for? I've been tasked with social media compliance and review. And if I miss anything, that comes down on my head. So to have some sort of automation process built in is a must. Imagine you have 200 LOs and they each have 3 social media accounts and they post on those twice weekly. That is daunting for any one person to tackle. And it's not just the review. As a lender, you're responsible for hanging on to mortgage advertising for 2, 3, 4 years, depending on the state. How do you possibly capture and screenshot all of that manually? That's really hard because social media is so different from regular marketing materials, like a brochure or the website, something that the lender controls, publishes. This is completely different. And with it comes all kinds of new risks. On that note, we did do a time study because of the manual versus technology solution. So we did the time study with an outside firm for a Six Sigma, and we were looking at it to just be able to quantify and try to do that kind of calculation for lenders based on however big they were as an institution. And we were seeing that it was just 275% more accurate and time saving when it came to looking for things through the system as opposed to manually doing it. You have to go find the LO. You hope they don't have a common name like Melissa Thomas. And then you want to find the account. You got to scan the account. You're looking at the profile. Then you have to look for them on 8 other social media platforms at a minimum. And then on top of that, you have to look at all that content. It's really exhausting. So to have a more pinpointed view and have control as an administrator in a system is just so worth the time and the money that you save.
No, no doubt. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Well, and one thing I'd like to add into that is there's a lot of talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, and every software company is like, oh yeah, we do that. I suppose from a programmer's perspective, I'm always a little put off by that, in that it's such a overused kind of sales hype term. So my personal, when I'm talking to people and I hear that, I kind of like, okay, but how does that benefit the application? And usually that's where the conversation ends. Like, I don't know, it's some magical black box, right? So that's always kind of, everybody uses that terminology out there in their marketing. So we do use some of those technologies for very specific things, and they can be useful, but they aren't necessarily the panacea that they are presented to be. But for an example of how we're able to use it is trying to find the equal housing logo and make sure that it's in one of your photos, something like that. It'd be mind-numbingly just terrible to have to scan every single image, visually, and kind of, because they're always blurry down in like the bottom right corner, and they're hard to see. So the using machine learning has been great for that. It's got a very high success rate of detecting those and saying, yep, this profile is good. And then OCR technology to extract text that are in those photos so that we can detect information that's been embedded into a flyer for free pizza if you sign this application, or whatever the case may be. So there are some very specific uses of it that can be a big benefit to the automation and time savings of the platform.
Yeah, and that's what I think is so cool that you guys do. Everybody on the surface thinks of, oh, I totally get it. You got to protect against, the type posts and the content, but not thinking about, well, what's embedded in images on social or attachments to that. And I love how you leverage OCR and machine learning technologies to actually apply that into the platform that Active Comply offers out there. And you hit the nail spot on too. As great as these different emerging technology buzzwords are to use out there and grow excitement in your platform, lenders are more and more getting keen to what they actually do as they're diving in with different organizations they're partnered with or considering. So you're right. If it's someone's going to pick it apart real quick if it's not that panacea that you're presenting out there.
That's right. And part of what we do is definitely the technology aspect, and how we can use that technology for customization for each lender. What is your company standard policies? When it comes to your profile, do you have a standard disclosure that you require in the about section? Do you use tools like Linktree? We make it possible that a lender can incorporate those company level policy items into the system and have that as part of the automation. We're not just here's the box offering, good luck. So we definitely make sure that all of our lenders feel comfortable and achieve their goals through automation, but we also give feedback from a compliance standpoint on things like policy level items. We've got documentation on what are some simple do's and don'ts that I can say to my LO when it comes to social media. How should I respond to negative reviews on social media? What's the right process? Do you have some templates? Talking about the social media policy that they have. What are some additions that you might want to make? Something that's notable is that very often we'll have lenders come on a demo and they've never heard of the site Alignable. And it's really noteworthy from a compliance standpoint because it's a small business referral website. And that word referral really makes me itchy as a compliance person, right? And so, we bring to the forefront, hey, not all social media is built the same. Some have more inherent risks than others. Here's where you should keep an eye out for. Here's what automation we can put in to look for particular items that might be pitfalls on this type of social media around RESPA Section 8 or TILA, things like that. And then we talk about it from a policy standpoint. How can you solidify that with your sales team?
Well, it's nice. You're making your clients not just dependent on the software to scan and pick up on theirs, but you're actually proactively giving them the tools to not make some of those common mistakes on social in the first place. That's very intuitive.
We hope.
Right? All you can do is give the information. It's on them to apply it from there.
So true.
Well, we know We know Active Comply as a social media monitoring and website archival system for the mortgage industry. But, I'd love to spend some time here just kind of shining the spotlight on the organization for, diving a little deeper into maybe some of the current feature offerings that you're seeing interest from clients or prospects out there. And to the extent that you're willing to share, maybe a little teaser for our audience, what's next on the horizon from Active Comply.
And maybe I can do some of the current and then pass off to you for upcoming updates, Mike.
All right.
Awesome. So Active Comply monitors both post content as well as profiles. We scan profiles for regulatory compliance. We give you a profile checkup, letting you know what's missing from the profile A, B, and C. Contact the LO to get that updated. You're able to document your due diligence as well as the corrective action process within the system. That way nothing gets lost in email chains. You've got automated date and timestamps. You've got the ability to have collection folders that are customized. See, that's the keyword, definitely with Active Comply, right? That is customized to your workflow process. So lenders have a division based on personnel members, potentially. So a for Tom folder. Maybe I'm an analyst who goes through Active Comply, finds issues, and then I escalate them for Tom's review. There's automated email notifications for Tom built into the system. That way he's busy doing his management thing and he knows when he needs to pop in to get something fixed or reviewed. We're also looking at that post content for trigger terms, and it comes preloaded with trigger terms that we find important, that we see all the time in mortgage advertising. But we give you that opportunity to make your own customizable trigger terms, right? So very often we'll see lender partners add words like forbearance. Don't know why. It couldn't have been because of a pandemic or anything, right? We see lenders add even phrases in that would be completely outside of the norm. We had a lender recently add endorsed by Dave Ramsey because they were having some friction with Dave Ramsey. Another lender who added in some competitor names because they got cease and desist letters when they were poaching LOs. Some lenders even added in sports teams names because they had trademark infringement suits. So the system has so much applicability currently that we can find anything on social media that a lender would find important. And then they get to decide how important it is on a level. And then they get to decide who takes care of it from a work process flow standpoint. We're also looking at websites. So what's the website on the social media? Where are they sending consumers? Is it a GoDaddy website where they're collecting personal consumer information that's going to their Gmail? Great. Is it some sort of error in the website URL itself where they put like .com and now they're sending them to some Ukrainian website and the consumer's very confused? So we find all kinds of issues. We also log complaints on social media and good reviews so that you can see those complaints and get a customer service rep over before they get escalated to the BBB or the CFPB, and good reviews in case a marketing person wanted to do some reposting of the really stellar ones. And I think that's the full gauntlet currently. There, hop on a demo to see, everything else fully.
Sure.
But Mike, I'm going to pass. Best way to do it, right?
Yeah, right.
So you got that, folks out there? Contact Melissa, get on a demo with Active Compliance, see it fully in action. I love what you're doing with the websites too. I think a lot of comment or mistakes can be made out there or just generally overlooked from a compliance standpoint because everyone's so hyper focused on the issue of the day that's taking flight on social.
Yeah, so true.
Well, and the interesting thing about the doing a demo, and then I'll talk about some of the future stuff, is that we do a demo using the potential client's own information. So it's not just some kind of generic demo that you walk through. It's like this is what your LOs are saying out there, and there's always some gems in there. You're like,
they're taking screenshots.
I was going to ask you, Mike, like, do you ever get anybody that's just absolutely aghast when they're like,
yeah, we have people
on my social feed? What?
Yep, there are people that say, can you click back so we can take a screenshot of this? And we've had people pick up the phone and like call upstairs like, hey, we've got a problem. And that's always a good moment because it shows the value of what we're doing. They could be doing it manually and they're just missing, it's just impossible to catch everything. So then as far as the future functionality goes, and we have a beta that we're rolling out right now to some of our clients, and where we're integrating. So what we're trying to do is continue to elevate the mortgage lender specific knowledge that's built into the system. So, we've built in a lot of trigger terms, a lot of phrases and things that we know to watch for. But there's also state specific rules and regulations that apply to what has to be on your profile, for example, what kind of links and disclosures and things along those lines. the fact that, you maybe have to have your name as John versus Jonathan, the proper address for your branch, all of those things. So in order to fully support that without requiring an enormous effort on our clients' parts, we've integrated with the NMLS data. So we've licensed the NMLS data set, and we pull in all the loan officers and all of the branches and all of your company level information. And then we can use that to to find all these social media profiles. And so if Jonathan Green has 3 different profiles, he has a Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, for example, we can identify that and pull them all under that one contact with their NMLS ID. Now we know what states they're licensed in. Now we know which rule sets should apply to all of their content. So once we have that kind of profile pulled together for the fictional John Green, we can watch for all of those problems, and in a lot of cases automate an outbound email with the compliance team's permission, but to send them, hey, your NMLS number is incorrect. You need to have your personal one and the company one, as just an example. Or in Oregon, you have to have a particular language on there, or in California, they changed the name of the regulatory body, and that needs to be updated as well. So we can have a lot of outbound automated, hey, these things need to change, right to the LOs. So the hope is to save the compliance teams a lot of time in outreach, where they find the problem, they reach out and say, hey, do this for a certain set of the problems that can be completely automated. And then the compliance team just has to follow up with the ones that aren't responding. They're not making the changes. Then maybe they get on the phone or send a direct email.
It's your branch manager,
Right. Go above their head and try to get it. So in addition to that, working on, we've been, the way we work with audits of our clients is very hands-on. So they say, hey, we've got this audit letter that we've received. We have to turn over this information by Friday. And so they send us the request, we pull it together, and then we hand it back to them, and they send it off to the auditor. And through that process, we're learning how each regulatory body, how they want the information, and what level of information and what format. And so now that we have that kind of in-house information, we're automating, or we're building a self-reporting audit system for that, so that they can go in, they can pull everyone from North Carolina, for example, that was active with the company between these 2 particular dates, and here's all their URLs for their social media profiles and things of that nature. So, and out beyond that, we're working on an integration with Domo, which some people may be familiar with it, but it's an executive dashboard system. And we're working with a partner, Richie May, to help integrate that data in with actual loan officer sales data, so that you can see how social media activity is affecting the sales, and and to what benefit or hindrance it can be for particular efforts. So those are some of the things that we have coming in the next few months.
I also forgot to mention that, and this update that's coming is based off of our NMLS dataset integration that we have, and it will be going down to the LO to LO level to get really specific and find all kinds of really fun issues that we have seen in the beta testing. But right now, we're currently at the company level. So that means that onboarding is really easy for us and the lender. So that means we're pulling in that information on a company level automatically. We're finding accounts that lenders never knew existed on sites they weren't aware of, like Alignable. And it means that we're ready to get up and running, almost immediately after the demo. And then we spend the next couple of weeks talking to you about customization and policy development. So we move a lot faster than a lot of our competitors too, so that they can get things answered in a timely manner. And very often we have lenders who come on in the middle of a social media audit. Like, we got to go. Can you help us? And we're like, we're here for you, whatever you need.
Well, I just think it's so cool, like what you've got kind of coming here with the regulatory and company kind of policy reporting metrics, just to kind of create your own data set of maybe based on where a lender is located at from prior regulatory polls that you've seen. It's kind of an advisory to them, like, here's what's going to be asked of you. And not to mention, you're saving a huge amount of time, I've got to imagine, being able to readily pull that data from these file folders that you've already got, as opposed to whatever archaic system they may use when doing so, if they are even doing that on their own.
And regulators are not patient at all. They're like, end of business tomorrow, thank you. You're like, what? And so it's hard to put aside everything that you already have on your plate and then suddenly make this the priority, even though it has to be. So it's great to have a partner that can support you in that way. And I speak from experience, definitely.
And super cool too with the Domo integration coming down the line. It sounds like essentially be able to allow lending and marketing teams to examine like the originator's post and correlate to how is that, everyone focuses on how you're building your brand or growing your network, but I haven't seen anything yet that allows you to correlate that back to what are we seeing from a production standpoint. So I think that's really game changing.
And to have those communications back and forth is great, definitely, to make that new information available to a lender and maybe make some actionable items out of it. Like, what's the reputation score, for a particular LO on an aggregate basis? How does that compare with, their lending? What keyword triggers are they talking about a lot? Are they not doing very many, VA loans? Well, how often are they talking about it? What opportunities are there from different markets on social media, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it totally yields itself to, having a more strategic footprint on how you're marketing out your products or your solutions. Or I've got to imagine too, just as you create kind of a historical record there, to be able to share scripts, if you will, or best practices with other originators looking to grow their footprint in general, or just drive more volume to certain product types.
So true. And we do a lot of what we do without needing LO buy-in. So we're pulling in the majority of social media automatically, which means we see things that maybe they didn't want us to see, which means that wall of shame folder really grows quickly. So it's great because it's so hard to get LO buy-in with some of the other competitors out there, where we're seeing, it looks great on paper, but only 60% of the LOs are doing what they need to do for you to be able to do your job. So we're pulling in a lot of the information automatically, archiving it for you automatically. And then you just get to deal with the funsies that you find.
Well, awesome. Well, Mike, Melissa, I want to thank you both again for being my guests today. Really enjoyed the conversation, a lot of informative information, and very excited to hear what you guys have got coming down the line at Active Comply too. And I think our members should be as well. So I want to thank you both for being the guests today and taking some time out.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to be here anytime, Tom.
Awesome. Always a pleasure. And just a quick reminder to our listeners, be on the lookout for the podcast and YouTube links for today's discussion for on-demand viewing, and share them out with your teams as well that couldn't join us today. Gain a lot of value from this discussion. And lastly, we'll be back here 2 weeks from today for our next episode of Tech Talk, May 13th. I'll have Simple Nexus President Catherine Schreiner Gates joining me. So until then, if you're talking TMC, you're talking tech. Be well, everyone.